All right, everyone, thank you for joining us. I am very excited to introduce Roan to you. He's one of our beloved admins. Roan is from the DC area, and he has a really cool nonprofit called the Imaginarium Gallery, right?
Yep,
And Knockerball DMV. Did I say that right?
yep.
And
With the knock.
it's a really cool place where you're focusing on transcendental learning um, through using the imagination and other innovative techniques, and you're focused very much on youth. I know you especially have a heart for young males, especially in that 14, 17 age range, but it's for youth in general. I know you've mentioned you're doing work at like the detention center recently and a lot of things like that. You've also got a lot of really fascinating things to say about everything, which I want to hear more about. And on a personal note, um, you also know what it means to really lose somebody that you love. You lost the love of your life. It was about 3 years ago, and that's kind of been hitting you still somewhat, as I know it does for everybody. So you've got all kinds of things going on that you have dealt with, and you're still standing, and you're doing all these amazing creative things that are just really beautiful. So I'm excited to be able to talk to you a bit and pick your brain a bit, and kind of hear what you had to say on a bunch of different stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so the first question is, if you could, what would be your personal philosophy in 20 words or less?
Personal philosophy in 20 words or less.
Yeah.
Personal philosophy would be that's a good one.
I
I
know,
tell you,
right?
but yeah, it is a good one. But my personal philosophy is be yourself, be your own person. Um, I kind of feel as though whatever you have after I am is the most important, and that first word you were given from your parents is the most important. So, hope that was 20 words or less.
Oh, that works. I like that. Now, when you say
Yeah.
first word, what do you mean by that? Are you talking about name or?
Your name, like my name being Roan, is the color of
Okay.
my skin when I was born, and that's probably why I have such a connection to it because it describes my skin. You know what I mean? So it's personal.
Oh,
So
that's cool. Yeah, I like that.
yeah.
All right, this is probably a little bit easier. Could you tell us about what you do for work and kind of how you feel about it right now, and maybe where you see yourself in the future as far as career or things that you want to do?
The Imaginarium, it's the Imaginarium Gallery. I pretty much think the word is better, Imagineer, because I kind of just use my imagination to kind of see things from different perspectives. That's what, and that's where I get the transcendental learning from. Um, the question, and that's the work I'm doing. So I do
Yeah.
mentor groups for boys. Um, I keep them in sessions during school, so the summer is pretty much free, so I can get my mind back because it's really draining. Um, but my biggest work right now is trying to help people see things from different perspectives. I think that's the best way of learning yourself is trying to see things from different perspectives within yourself. And what was the question again?
No, that
What was-
works.
okay, good.
How do you feel about what you do? Like,
I love it. I
yeah.
think me coming up on hip hop and like when I say hip hop, almost like going back to like breakdance in the beginning of it. Um, I think I have a certain culture idea of things. So um, I think it sets into that. I think um, the culture I know is collective consciousness. So it helps me kind of see myself. And it always makes me think about that one parable of the talents. And if someone says I have a certain talent, if I'm not giving it and I'm not sharing it with other people, then I think it kind of dulls it out and maybe even dies. So it helps me be my I am. You know what I mean? It helps me be my own. So I love it.
That's awesome. Could you expound a bit on how you feel hip hop relates into that? Because I know people have a lot of preconceived notions about what that means and what does that mean to you? like that culture, and
Yeah,
how does it fit into what you do?
definitely. It's crazy how everything that people are talking about now, as far as with spiritual science, or yeah, spirit science, or I call it spiritual science, it goes along with that culture. So with hip hop, what I mean by that is the understanding, like the word breaks down to like hip, like when you're talking, like even back in the '60s with the flower children or the baby boomers as a whole, they'd be like, yeah, I'm hip, I understand, I get it, you know what I mean? So it's like I'm conscious to it at that point. So, and with once you get that consciousness, the next thing you want to do is move with it. So, hop, hop is motion. So conscious motion. And once you start understanding, or once I started understanding the depth of not only hip hop culture, because that was just the name they coined to the culture, but that particular culture goes back, it's timeless. It goes back to a lot of Aboriginal um, cultures.
Wow.
So the hip hop, a lot of things that are going on right now are actually bringing out a lot of things about the culture that I know. So using one of the first four, which is rap, that's what we're doing now. We're rapping. You know what I mean? So it helps out with that. So as far as with the Imaginarium, it's understanding culture science on a whole new level, but then understanding that a lot of how we got here was hip hop, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. When you actually think about a lot of the bridges that have been created, whether it be diversity, or even we'll just go there. We're just seeing people for who they are, and you being your first instrument, each person being their own first instrument. I just think what I do kind of helps out with that. So it's so much more broad,
Wow.
but I don't want to keep going like down the rabbit hole.
No, I
So
like that. No, you can go down the rabbit hole. I like that explanation. That puts kind of a whole new perception on it, which I like.
yeah, yeah, because a lot of people, KRS One would say, one time I heard him say, everybody's hip hop, whether they know it or not. Everybody's hip hop. So a lot of times when people think hip hop, they think rap. They think Run DMC, or they think Wu Tang, or they think, J. Cole, or they think whatever the spectrum or whatever year that you gravitate towards, your listening ears, they think rap, but it's not that. It's something so much more than that. So, yeah.
Yeah, wow. I really like that. Okay,
Yeah,
well, that kind of puts a new spin on things. I like that definition.
right.
Okay, I got an easy question for you. What are some of your favorite types of foods, and what is your relationship to food, like as far as a mind, body, spirit connection? How do you feel it impacts you?
I'm getting better, you know what I mean? But I'm not vegan. I like steak, you know what I mean? I try to watch, for me, I'm about the same weight I was since high school.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so for me, my favorite food is like anything tomato based. So I like spaghetti is like one of my favorites, or like pizza. Um, but I just try to keep a balance, keep greens, you know what I mean, and try to stay towards the healthy things at least once or twice a day. But honestly, I'm more about my spirit and soul, and help and trying to maintain the balance of how that should be. So
Okay,
I'm working on my food, but I'm not perfect with it yet. So
right. But you
mhm.
obviously you're saying you're the same weight, so you're a healthy weight. And you do you feel
Oh,
pretty good then with the way you eat?
yeah, the way I got to that was listening to my body to understand when I'm full. And then if I've started to take on too much fat in different spots, mostly my stomach or something, or anything my body's telling me, I'll switch my diet to go towards where I need it to go. But the biggest thing is realizing how much I'm eating and listening to my body, because I don't like being full. I think that's like one of the worst feelings. It's like when you're full and you don't want to move. It's, to me, that's like the worst body feeling I can have. So that's one way I keep my weight the way it is. So yeah.
So you're pretty aware of when you're eating and you're paying attention. That's pretty cool. Some people just go on autopilot, eat while they're watching TV, and they don't realize until they've, eaten much more than they needed. That's cool.
I think it was, truthfully, I think it was Celestine Prophecy, that particular book, that helped me understand that particular concept the most. But staying in tune with your body and listening to it, as well as, your perception of what's going on. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's simple, but a lot of people don't do it. So that's pretty cool that you practice that. It's something
it
that
takes
you
about,
have to be conscious about it.
yeah, no doubt, you do. And yeah, and there's so many things with food. Like, I don't like when I see people eat to feel better. It weirds me out. I'm like, really? That's, yeah. So
Emotional eating is huge.
it is. It definitely is. Yeah.
Well, that's cool that you can differentiate that too when you notice when someone is eating to feel better versus what your body needs. That's
Yeah, I
a
had to get
big
better at
distinction.
it. Oh, sorry.
No,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I had to get better at it because I used to be like, if I see someone put too much salt on their food, I'm like, yo, whoa, you know what I mean? And I did that to one of my friends one time, and he was like, yo, it's my food, bro. You know what I mean? And I was like, nah, I'm not. I said, cool, you know what I mean? I wasn't, because I understood at the moment that I did it how it was taken. But later
Yeah.
on, a week later, he came back to me. He was like, Roan, I'm gonna tell you, ever since you said something about the salt, I've actually been looking at how much salt, and I cannot believe how much salt I was putting on my food. So
Wow.
it kind of, so
You
yeah,
planted a seed. That's cool.
yeah. I think it's because I know, I don't know what it is. For some reason, when I say things to people, they just take it as a brother. For some reason, and they know that I'm not giving it as something else.
Yeah.
You know?
It sounds like they can really sense your intent and that you really care about them. You're not just trying to criticize them or pick on them or make them feel bad about something. You're actually, they're getting the vibes that you care. That's what it sounds like.
At least I try. As I'm thinking about it, as I said that, I was like, but what about those other times when people like flipped out on you? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, so
Oh,
yeah,
that's everybody. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. How about movement? Are you active? What kind of movement do you do? And how do you notice that that impacts your body, moving or not moving? Or,
I'm trying to work on. What do you mean when you say moving?
well, like some people are very sedentary and they sit in chairs. You go to work, sit at work, you sit in a car, and then you go home, sit in a couch. Like, do you move your body? Do
Do
you
that.
exercise in any way?
Well, what I try to do, I longboard, I kayak. You know what I mean? I I always walk. Try to. I mean, I drive, but I always try to walk as much as I can instead of drive. So, um, I like to stay active. I like going places and seeing people. When I was younger, my mom, she always used to say that the reason she always knew the best punishment for me was to keep me in my room because I would like I'd go crazy because I want to go out. You know what I mean?
Oh,
My brother could go in the room and create all types of things. That was the best. He was like, he's at home, but me, totally different. So I like to stay active, but I'm not really into the whole. I try to do push-ups before I go to sleep, and when I wake up, and I do some pull-ups. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
yeah, I'm not the. I got to get my body together, and you know what I mean, all the weights and everything. Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Well, that's pretty cool that you're moving. And that the longboarding and the walking and the kayaking, that's not a light physical activity necessarily either. So, um,
In a, go ahead.
oh no, yeah. What about some of your favorite music and maybe creative interests or pursuits you have artistically or otherwise? Like it's a big, broad thing. Tell me a bit about all that.
I just heard a bird or something. I was like, what is that? But
It's saying hello.
but music, cool, definitely. The new stuff is I try to stay up with it so I kind of can talk to the kids about it. And I think the biggest thing right now is me understanding and me telling other people in my age group or just older, stop trying to get the kids to hear things how you heard them because you're. I hear a lot of my friends, they're sounding like our uncles back in the day. You know what I mean? Oh, that ain't nothing but. But as far as like genres, I like everything. Um, I like jazz. I like rap. I like country. I like rock. There's not too many music that I don't like. I can usually find something with it. There's a couple I don't like because I just don't like the frequency it seems to be on. But on my iPod, when I used to have an iPod, it had like 13,000 songs on it. So yeah, music is definitely my thing. I think the best thing about music, and when I say that, I thought about Bob Marley when he says, "When it hits you, you feel no pain." I think it's very therapeutic. So sometimes I need rock, um, like Deftones, or um, I love Jimmy because once I could finally hear him, at first I couldn't, and then my brother, who's all in the music, he was like, "Ron, you like percussion." So a lot of people don't pay attention to Jimmy's drummer. They don't know how great he was. They just don't even notice that if the drummer times it for Jimmy to go all around the world and then come back. So once I started focusing on the drummer, I could hear Jimmy a lot better, and then just things like that. I can hear a lot of music just differently if I connect to certain frequencies in it. So does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. You're appreciating different aspects of it. That's I like
Good.
that. Yeah, no, that's nice. What about other artistic interests or endeavors that you have? Like, do you like to write? Do you like to do artwork? Like things like that?
Oh, I love to write, um, but I think for a long time, yeah, I like to write. Um, I really like to write. Um, Graphic art, I love doing that too. Uh, what else?
No,
Probably
no.
some things, but that's with writing. It gets hard because I try to stay away from the vain or vanity side of it, so it gets a little difficult. So yeah.
There's a vanity side of it. What do you mean by that?
Well, when I was younger, I was really into music. I used to be like a rapper and a singer. I used to dance all the time, and I really liked myself back then. So
Great.
you know what I mean. So I get caught in Hollywood Rome. So I just try to stay away from the vanity side. So when I do that with any art, it's hard to. A lot of people love the egotistical side or their ego, or they think that's important parts of their spirituality. I don't. So it gets in the way sometimes. I get in the way of myself sometimes with allowing myself to be true, with expressing myself with the truth I know, because it seems sometimes it triggers certain things in people when I do that. So,
Okay. Wow.
okay.
Yeah, no, yeah. That, wow. I never thought about it
I,
that way. And now that you're mentioning, I'm like, yeah, there is that fine line between being authentic, expressing yourself creatively, and then when ego gets in the way, maybe it becomes more of a performance or I'm not sure how to put it, but yeah, I can get that
I
there's
have,
that balance you have to strike.
but I really kind of, truthfully, our group has helped me with that. And the reason why I say that, because of our group and the way it is, it's there to share. So it also, I think we also have a good push not to be so much on yourself, not to be so egotistical when you have a perspective or you have a perception, to give it a chance that, okay, D sees it like this, and then you can kind of meditate on that for a second and kind of think, damn, like you just said that you had never thought about the vanity side or the ego side of it. I think our group is like, it's cool with that. You know what I mean? We push to do, to see
Yeah,
things from different perspectives. So yeah.
yeah, which is in line with what you're doing. That's pretty cool.
Mm,
Okay, now switching gears a little bit. I know these are very big topics, but
no
have
worries.
you experienced like racism or sexism in your life, and how has that impacted you? And then kind of what are your thoughts about those two topics? And that's really big, so feel free to say whatever comes to mind as much as you want.
Yeah, no doubt. Racism, bug, but racism definitely, sexism too. Um, Racism more, but with me, um, I've never seen race the same way as other people. I was never taught that race was real. Uh, I think the thing that gave me a different perspective, like I said, the name of my skin, well, my name is Roan. It was the color of my skin. And my parents met at like Resurrection City. That was where Martin Luther King was on his way to when he got assassinated. Um, and kind of knowing that, and my parents telling me, um, we were black because there was no other square to be. You knew where you had to drink, and you knew those were white people, you knew you were black. But, and I'm not going to go all down into my family history as far as blood and all as far as Aboriginal or slave history, but my mom always told me to remember the world is going to call me black, but for me to remember who I am as far as my African heritage, and that my name was Roan. So a lot of times when people were like, black this or white that or race this or race that, it didn't sound right to me because I was Roan. You know what I mean? So understanding the structure of racism, going back to slavery, how even let me say this before we go all down the racism thing. I think racism was created by racialism science. I think the only reason why we actually even see ourselves as different races is because someone looked at the science and made it look that way. When you go back into, and we've talked about it, when you go back into Caucasian and what that comes from, where that is derived, it comes from racialism science. It comes from aristocrats sitting back trying to figure out a way to get certain people out of their grouping. So for me, to bring it all home and not go down a rabbit hole, um, I just I think sometimes because we don't know our roles in the world or in our family, we get into these worldly labels and we get into these worldly brands. And I think sometimes when I look at the word white and black, when I go into the etymology of the word, it seems as though it was only created to divide Europeans and Africans. And it takes us a little bit further away from the geographics on the globe. Now, I don't think that they thought, the people that used that to divide the people thought of it that deep. But when they saw it work, it was like, oh, shit. Oh, excuse my language. But it was like, oh, okay, yeah. It's like, oh, this is working? Going back to the Bacon Rebellion back in 1670. I'm not going to go into a historical thing, but I don't believe in race anymore. I don't believe that. I truly believe, like Jane Elliott says, and when you go back through certain, when you follow the pattern of what we call race, you see, like Jane Elliott says, there's only one race. Now, you're lighter than I am, and I'm a little bit darker than you. But at the same time, there's geographic reasons for that. There's science reasons for that. But it doesn't make us different races. It makes us just look different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just that we have to download ourselves from that or upload ourselves from that. And I think too many people sometimes want to ignore racism and racialism science, and instead of understanding why we call ourselves that, so then we can get back to our names, and you can be you, like I said before, the birth names. We start there. Once we get to start there, we can see everything else from that. So sexism, I haven't really. I'm seeing it more now because it seems as though there's a lot more women in the corporate arena, and it's funny how you guys
Uh-oh.
know, but then at the same time, you will kind of click up and start treating men like that a little bit. You know what I mean? But it's just weird. And not as a whole, I'm not making a blanket statement. I just see it
Right,
in
right.
my sisters that they do the same thing that my brothers do on the sexism thing. It's just weird. But I think we're all learning more with understanding the gay community too. That it gives us well, well, I gotta listen to understand that now, you know. So I think, I don't know. I think I haven't experienced it to the point to really kind of go down a rabbit hole, but um, did I answer the question?
Yeah, no, you did.
Always
But
go down. Good.
so on a
Go ahead.
personal level, though, when you said you've experienced racism, like what is that like for you? Because there's a lot of debate right now, okay? And I get what you're saying. We need to understand where it came from, why this has come
Right.
about in our vernacular right now, why we've been made to believe that there's these dividing lines somehow and we're all humans. But at the same time, it is a prevalent problem right now. So have you
Right.
experienced it, and like how have you dealt with that? 'Cause
How
it's a
I
very
dealt
real
with it,
problem a lot of people have faced.
yeah,
And,
how I've dealt
and oh, if I
is
could just say one thing, I know for myself, okay, with my skin being lighter, when I talk to people about this and I try to tell them my personal view is that we're all just humans, not trying to ignore the problems that are happening or turn a blind eye so that I can then go about my merry way and feel better because I know it's there and I want to do something about it. But then they
listen.
always get upset. And
I'm gonna get my coffee while you're talking. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm just gonna get my coffee. I'm listening now.
oh yeah. I think they get upset and feel that I'm somehow not acknowledging that there is a problem, that people are being hurt by these perceptions and these beliefs. So I'm wondering what what can someone like me say or do about that? Because I feel like sometimes when I try to listen, there is no win. If I say that there's this, well then I'm not being true to my belief that we are all human. Um, but
I got you.
if I say that, then people think that well now I'm saying that doesn't exist, and they're like, Deanne, bad things are happening, you know. And I've experienced very little racism in my lifetime, so it's not something that I can speak to. That's why I was asking, what has your experience been, and um,
I got you.
what can be helpful maybe from both sides of this coin?
I got you. The way, totally understand. Um, I understand to the point of what you're asking me. I don't understand how you see it, and I think for me, it's. I grew up in the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area. You know what I mean? And this particular area is really diverse, and the structure of racism is a little different, but it's still there. And what I mean, it's a lot more subtle. And I think it's not consciously done. I think a lot of times people do it and they don't even realize they did it. But then I also think there's a little selective amnesia to whether or not they know they've done it before. So for me, how I've experienced it is I've experienced it like I said before. If I was raised a certain way to see race, when I'm talking to, let's just say, there's different levels of understanding of race. So I remember Tupac said one time, and I love that he said it. He said, "I'm not black in the sense of just this overall. I'm black like I'm black to in the sense of how it pertains to my tribe." So in my understanding of, and when I say even black, it's still what I had said before. It's still more African American to me. And you'll notice I don't call people white or black a lot of times because even if I do, I'll say little w and little b, not big W and big B, because I think we've taken adjectives and excuse my language, but fucked ourselves with them to the point where, like you said, you're trying to understand it, but as you're understanding it, depending on the person you're talking to, that's what I told one of my friends. I didn't grow up in Ferguson. I didn't grow up in a place where um, I knew that a certain amount of money in our town is made from them arresting me and my family or people I know and getting fines from us and then watching. I did see it in the sense of where I grew up. I grew up in like a working class part of my county. And as I grew older, I heard people talking about where I grew up. And I'm like, well, damn. Because they from, and I'm like, whoa. But it was funny because you could hear the classism from it, from other African Americans speaking as though they didn't come from that area. And I'm like, oh, so you're making a point to make sure that people know you. And see, where I became a man wasn't where I grew up as a child. So I grew up in Maryland, and Maryland was to me a little bit more working class, a more diverse working class. So it was more Italians and Portuguese and Middle Eastern and Asian, but everybody's dad or mom might work together. You know what I mean? And over here in Virginia or Northern Virginia, it's a little bit more further apart in class, depending on where you live and
Ah,
where you live. So when you say where you live out here, it's you know what I mean? And not now, because you know what I mean,
yeah,
from where I live, but
right.
it's going down a rabbit hole, pull it back in.
No, it's
What I
okay.
mean by good, I told one of my buddies one time, he asked me similar to the same question. He's European American, right? And he was like, Roan, I'm so glad I ran into you because I wanted to ask you a question, but I don't want to sound like the dumbass white guy that's asking the dumbass, you're my black friend, let me ask you a question. And he was just being honest. And he
Right,
said,
right.
he was like, first of all, I'm Republican. He was like, so that comes off like an asshole most of the time nowadays. He said, but sometimes I start talking about something, and then the next thing they're calling me a racist, and they're saying I'm acting like a white boy, and I'm seeing it like, you know. And he said, but Ron, you know, I'm not trying to see it like that. You know, I'm trying to understand. He said, so he was like, even with the Ferguson thing, and he starts talking about it, and he says something along the lines of a specific in the case. And I was like, well, where'd you get that information? Because my information tells me it's something totally different. He was like, nah, and he starts going down the investigation he did. So now I'm like, I totally hear what you're saying, but as you were talking, I started thinking, I'm not from Ferguson. I wasn't there to know what happened when Mike Brown got shot. Now that doesn't mean that I don't understand the structure of racism. I don't understand, but I'm not that African American community. I don't know, so I can't argue as though I know, and I'm not going to. Another thing is the reason why, and this is me talking to him. I said the reason why you come off like a white boy, and they're like, "Are you acting like a white boy?" Because when you start seeing it as a white person, then you're missing it as a people person. You're missing the connection of you're playing the role of white. You've placed yourself in that square, just like a person that's playing the black square. They see it as black. So when they're speaking, when they're seeing things, that's how we've been trained to see things. So, and to, and so I finally told him, I was like, I totally hear what you're saying, but basically what I'm saying is that you're pretty terrible at being a white person if you're trying to figure out what it is to be not a white person, you know? So, and I say that, and I understand when I say that, when people hear me say it and they're looking at me, they hear African American, maybe trying to, a black guy trying to break down the whole uh, white structure of America and the white power structure this way or that way, which yes, I am. But at the same time, I'm not trying to knock down America. I'm not trying to knock down the structure of culture in America. I'm trying to, I want to show people how I see it, because even my African American friends and my black friends will say, they'll be like, when I say I don't go with that, I don't play race. I don't do that anymore. It was like, oh, you don't see color? I was like, nah, I didn't say I don't see color. I said I don't race. And when I say that, what I mean by that, I don't compete with people. And it doesn't bother me that somebody's a little bit lighter, they don't have as much melanin in their skin, or you got more melanin in your skin. So once we start playing melanin, non-melanin, then we start thinking on our mammalian side of ourself, which gets us to our lower chakras. Why am I thinking like that? Oh, because the empire, colonial, however that went, this way or that way, led us to call ourselves by these classifications. So um, I guess for me, as I've gotten more aware about why we call ourselves, we've talked about the science of language before. And when I start to get into the science of language of why we're calling ourselves what we're calling ourselves, it actually reminds me of everybody's seen the movie Roots. And when Toby or Kunta Kinte is getting beat and he keeps saying, "My name's Kunta." Now, that's a very serious moment in that film, and it's very emotionally charged. But what I tell people is when you step outside of your emotions and you really look at what's going on, he wasn't fighting for his blackness. He wasn't fighting for his connection to all these other people, whether they be a lighter human or a darker human. You kept hearing him say, "I'm a Dinka warrior. My tribe is Dinka." There was an understanding to his I am that went to his manhood that had nothing to do with his body. It had to do with this collective consciousness that he carried with his tribe, with his family that went back to his grandfather's grandfather's grandfather. So when I look at that scene, there's different things I see. I see the structure that it wasn't the slave master whooping him. He was telling somebody else to do it. He said, "Yeah, keep going." He was telling him to administer the beating for what? For him to, there's a helicopter going over my head. I think there was an accident down
Yeah.
the road.
Oh, that happens.
Um,
You can wait a second if you need to.
but but for me, like I said, once I started understanding the structure of slavery, once I started understanding the structure of racialism science, once I understood the reason why poor Europeans wanted to call themselves white, once I understand that whiteness came from the Roman Catholic Church moving up into Europe. And like I say, when you look at Braveheart or you look at the movie Shaka Zulu, the only difference is the melanin or non-melanin in those tribes, that empire was coming in because they didn't see the Scottish, they didn't see the Irish as white. If you still go into what they used to call Irish, it's like they used to look at Irish lower than Jews and blacks as far as with the English Empire and that whole whiteness thing. So a lot of times it's once you start realizing how we've been divided as the people, and for me, even in my program with the Imaginarium, I focus on the family, the community, and the people. And I'll tell them, you can start breaking that into different religions, you can start breaking that into different races, you can start breaking that into different classes. But if you just stick to the structure of man, woman, child, family, once you have that, it's a house or wherever you live. In that, you have another family here, you got another family here, you got another family here. What's that? That's the community. In that community, you start understanding your role within your family better. Past the people, past the family to the community, then you have the people that make up the surrounding this way and that way. But if you stick to those three things, for me, you start seeing through the bullshit, excuse my language again, but you start seeing how our inalienable rights that were there before we wrote them down, how we've slowly but surely taken ourselves, to me, out of that mind, out of that universal mind for each other, or just all the way around. So for me, there's plenty of racist stories I could tell you about people yelling things out the window or fights I got when I was younger. And but to me, that helped me better see. And like I told somebody that asked me that same question, how I feel about race, truthfully, I really felt sorry for anybody that looked at me and felt better than me because of whatever their skin color was. Because it's like, oh, you feel like that? That's God, they fucked you up. You know what I mean?
No
And
kidding.
dark or light humans. I'm not, you know what I mean? So, and there's so much more I can say, but I think just from last weekend and what we're seeing that people kind of do right now, I think the hipness is the understanding is getting a little bit more of an overstanding and a metaphysical perspective of race and things like that. There had to have been a serious accident, but sorry, go ahead.
No, it's
Can you
okay.
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you good. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So if I understand you correctly, what you're suggesting is that rather than look at black, white, say there's an incident that comes up in the news, we're instead looking at it as people, men, women, children, and none of us, no matter what melanin we have or don't have, can really understand what it's like for those people in that situation. And we shouldn't be framing it in terms of that so much as the human experience that they're going through that's unique to them, their city, their situation, that sort of a thing. Is that a fair summation or?
Well, a real short way of saying what I said, I remember Morgan Freeman said one time, the best thing to do with racism is to stop talking about it. I think that's the dumbest thing you could possibly do, because then we don't understand how we got here.
Yeah.
So my thing is dig into why we call ourselves the names. Once you start doing that, you're going to start seeing why a European American woman might say, I gave up race for my humanity. You'll understand why I'm saying some of the things about I don't believe in race, because you'll start to understand, yeah, why do I call myself white? Why do I call myself black? Why? Um, and I understood a particular perspective, definitely from Malcolm X when he returned from Mecca, not before. Well, I got a really good perspective before he left, because let me understand the system of racism a little bit better. But when he came back, I got to the point where I realized, okay, if all Europeans were around themselves, why would they start calling themselves white? If we were all black around each other, or as we call each other black, if we were all black, why would we call our? Can you hear me? Feels like I'm reporting live news. You know what I mean? But
Heck yeah.
as far as where was I at?
You're saying like if we're all around white people, why would we call ourselves white? If you're all around black people, why would you call yourself black?
That's what made me start getting a different perspective of where it came from and how it grew. Once I started understanding how the church used it against non-Christians, even within their own uh, providence or their particular area, they use it against people. So once I understood how people used, no, let me go back. Once I understood the seed of where it came from, I understood better why I saw myself, or why other people saw themselves the way in which, when I was younger, my mom used to tell me I wasn't black, right? And I used to think my mom was not being real with her race. I'm like,
Oh,
Mom, you're not selling out. You know what I mean? But she was trying to tell me that the world is going to call you certain names, but remember your name. And when you remember your name, you're going to see things that I can't even show you of what me and your father realized coming up. And I love the fact my parents gave me that, because they would tell me I could be whoever I want to be. And they said, don't ever forget the system that was created, that we went through. But our generation did a lot of things we did in the 60s, so y'all could be whoever you could wanted to be, you know? So in that, my dad, I remember him telling me something. When all the white horses start riding that way, and all the black horses start riding that way, because somebody told him, you ride your own horse the way you feel like riding at that point. You know what I mean? And forget all those other horses. And that makes me
nice.
think of all the king's horses and all the king's men. Makes me think about, so many different things. But it gave me a better I am. It gave me a better understanding of what we say after I am, because I'm Roan. When someone asks me about, you know, when they start getting too much into these labels, I'm like, I'm Roan, man. You know what I mean? Let's start there, and then you can understand so much more about my book. Book meaning my life. But I'll stop there. In my ear.
No, that makes sense. Who we are on the outside, or what we look like, or it could apply to other things as well. So people get attached to a title from a degree, or I'm an empath, or whatever it is that they latch onto of this is who and what I am. And none of them are necessarily who or what we are. It's like we're attaching to the wrong thing to define ourselves, maybe.
I I think so. And I
Yeah.
think did I cut you off?
No.
Okay. When we do, yeah, I just think, and the I am thing, I'm not going to lie, it comes from scripture. I call it H in scripture because I don't like, my thing about scripture is if the books weren't together at first, then they were books already. You know what I mean? So if I call it H in scripture without calling it what we call it or we're told to call it, then it was just a book, and then we can talk about the book without feeling like, oh, he's going scripture.
Bringing
But
all the religious connotations. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
you know, that I am that they talk about when what was it can you hear me? Okay. It sounds like I'm like in one of those neighborhoods where there's like all this crime going on. It's like where the
Roan, are
really
you
there's that
safe?
right.
If anything
No, but you
happens.
have spotlight. I really think there's an accident.
There
But
probably
I
is,
mean
yeah.
it
But
is,
you're
but
saying
I
like
hope
if we say I am,
back to I am. Going back
yeah,
to
in
with
scripture, ancient
Moses.
scriptures, yeah.
Right. And who they called the Hebrews, or who we call the Hebrews now at this particular point. In that particular story, when Moses asks, okay, when I go back and tell these people about what you just told me, which God am I going to say? You know what I mean? And he basically said, tell them I'm the God of I am. So when you think about the science of that, I'm like, that's pretty tight. You know what I mean? That's, I mean, you could meditate on that for like, I think, in, like a long time.
Oh,
But in
yeah.
that, right. So without going into this way or that way, just thinking about that science, it gave me an idea of, yeah, why do we call ourselves all these different names? Why do we get so stuck in someone else's script that they wrote, whether it be that book I was just talking about? A second ago, I said my book. When I started understanding my life, that each one of us have our own life story, our own book of Rome, or book of John, or book of Alex, or book of, matter of fact, I got that when I lost my lady. And I don't know if we talked about that yet, but
No, we didn't.
yeah, one of the things that, well, I lost my lady 3 years ago in a fire. Um, and I wasn't home at the time, and by the time I made it home, she wasn't here anymore. So uh, I don't want to trip and get too emotional because sometimes it just happens.
It's
But
okay.
what what it what it did for me, something that someone said to me was, um, it was either one of her, I think it might have been one of her parents, but I'm not sure. But she said she heard this person speaking, and he said that each of us, when we lose someone, realize, and they were speaking in a religious setting or a spiritual setting. So they were speaking on a metaphysical, as death and life being a little bit different just than just a body understanding. And what they said was, each of us has a book in this life. And when we leave this particular chapter, that's the end of this chapter, but it's not the end of the book. So in understanding when I think it was more to the point when we're dealing with our grief, for me, not for anybody else, but not to
Right.
be so selfish about the gift that you were given. And for me, did I make a left? What were we talking about? I'm like,
No,
how
no,
do we?
it's good. You're talking about grief and I am and how when she passed it was making you realize this on deeper
The book
levels.
of
Your
life.
book. Yeah, your book.
Each of us have our books, and that's
Yeah.
for me. There was a moment when I understood. I'll say it like this: I feel like it's a disgrace to get mad at anything about how my lady left this world. And what I mean by that is that once I got my senses back, once I could control the emotional tsunamis that were happening, when I first realized it, I was able to understand the pattern that led me to that moment. And as far as that day when they called me and told me that there's a fire at my house, and they were trying to tell me that it had reached the next apartment, but my mind wouldn't accept it or just understand it. So I was like, because my thing was like, go and tell her so she can get out the house. She's home. You know what I mean? And I'm not even tripping out. I'm really thinking it's a small little thing. And he was like, no, I don't think you understand what I'm trying to tell you, Ron. It's reached the next apartment. And I was like, what? And then my mind goes, why am I still talking to him? And I hung up to try to call her. Um, anyway, finally reached to the house 20 minutes, about 15 minutes after someone had called me. I could actually see the smoke from 95 but I'm still thinking, I'm gonna make it. You know what I mean? So I made it.
Okay, and going. Sorry, we lost you for a second there, but you were just talking about you got the call, you were on your way back, and then what? To the apartments.
So funny. I've never talked about this. I mean, I've talked about it, but just not. Anyway, I got back to the. Are you still there? It seems like it froze. Hold on. I think we're frozen. We can start again if you want.
Yeah, let's start. Okay, so as you were saying.
Yeah, I got back to the apartment and I tried to run up the stairs and without going too far into it, basically the reason why I started talking about that particular moment was as I was trying to get up the stairs and they realized I wasn't a fireman, they an officer grabbed me and I was about to fight to go upstairs. Cause I really felt if she's going, I gotta go too, Um, but he was like, sir, some people made it out. And when he said that, I thought if I go in there and she's out here, she always said she wanted to go first, period. So I thought, okay, yeah, this can't be real. She made it out, you know? So but there was something within me that knew, but of course that wasn't a reality I was willing to accept at that particular moment. So in the moment, so I was there for a couple hours, just kind of just trying to waiting for them to tell me. And I was just silent. There was a chaplain there the whole time, but where I was trying to get to was um, there were certain things that happened within our time together, whether it be our first date. We went to go see Titanic, and her thing was always like, the only thing wrong with that movie, babe, is that the woman is not supposed to go. She's not supposed to be on Earth by herself. The woman's supposed to go first, you know.
Oh.
And then the second, our favorite movie was What Dreams May Come. And if anyone's ever seen that movie,
that was a powerful one.
right. And that was like in the beginning of our relationship. Both of those movies. And she always said, even with that one, she was like, see, man went home first. It's not how it's supposed to be. I want to go home first. And that was just the pattern with her. So when when they finally told me that she was in there and that she was gone now, I had the moment of, the taking it all in where you just scream or just yell out. And I was about to try to leave our condo and just go someplace else. I didn't know where I was going to go. But anyway, the chaplain said, he goes, hey, brother, can I pray with you real quick before you roll? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, before we pray, I just want to say something, if that's okay. And I was like, okay. I didn't know what he was gonna say. And you know, people say the dumbest shit anyway sometimes. Excuse my language again. Sometimes, you know, I just do
That's
it.
fine.
Okay, good. Sometimes we're like, oh, he's cussing again. But either way, um, he said, listen, brother, uh, I remember you told me you guys were together 17 years. You met, both of you guys came from a single parent home. You didn't really know how to do a relationship. And I'm thinking, I told this guy all that, you know what I mean? But I guess there was a moment where I did. But he goes, and you had a wonderful relationship for 17 years, and you had a relation. He said, do yourself a favor, brother. He was like, don't keep living this day. Remember the 17 years that y'all spent together and celebrate that. That was like right before I left, right? Like our old condo. I had nothing at that moment. Everything I owned, everything from her to my books to everything was gone. And he said that to me. And the reason why I got this was to say, once I got past my emotions, the once I got past the wave of tsunamis of emotions that kept hitting me, I remember there were certain things in my life, even to the point of us talking about her going home the night before she passed. And I'm like, why do you think I'm going to be so okay when you go home? And she was like, babe, you're going to be riding your bikes. You're going to be, I mean, that's how we talked about it. So um, it was at some point, wasn't some point, it was getting back to my spirit mind, getting back to my spiritual understanding of this world and death and life, and remembering how we talked about it, and remembering certain things that the spirit, I'll call it the spirit, showed me and prepared us for it. How's she gonna watch the movie Final Destination? She loved those series, right? And she'd always be like, babe, I'm telling you, I know it's weird, but I really think it's gonna be just like this. It's gonna be something that's gonna happen, and then all of a sudden I'm just, it's just, I just think that I'd be like, babe, shut up, you know what I mean? Or because you know whatever. But and it's difficult sometimes for me to kind of connect with people about that, because I feel like sometimes if you didn't know her, like her girlfriends know she talked about death like that, and they knew that we talked about it like that, and my friends know. But either way, once I got back to my spirit mind and it happened, it's funny, I think our group will understand it. It was the first time my cousin, he owned a paintball field, and he kept telling me, man, come out, man. And I'm thinking, why does he keep telling me to come out to the paintball field? He knows what the hell I just went through. I don't want to play any fucking paintball. You know what I mean? So when I got there, he was like, you haven't seen the new stuff I did. Go out and check it out. And I was like, he was like, nobody's playing. We've ended the games. Go out there and check it out. And I go out there, and I'm out there, and I start talking to myself like I usually do, or something like that. And
Oh.
I'm like, Roan, you got to remember before this. You got to remember. And I said, you got to remember to practice what you preach. And that was something she always used to say to me. Like, don't go around saying shit if you're not going to live by it. You know what I mean? And she was just enough of what I needed in a woman to always push me. That's why I'm not going to go there. But I'm trying to keep it on what we were talking about.
Yeah,
But
it's
when
okay.
I practiced what you preach, it was, and I'm not saying she said it with me. I'm not saying I heard, but there was something of comfort. And like I said, it was the first time everything around me was nature. There was no building structures. There was no something. The floor was the ground. It was all trees around me. And it was at sunset. And there was just something in that moment when I said, yeah, you got to practice what you preach, man. But I didn't say those words. I said it. And when I said it, it sounded just like when she would, you know what I mean? And in that moment, I remembered, I can't really say but the pattern, the things, Final Destination movie, the first two movies, she always used to say I wanted to go home first. It was like I could see the beauty within the ugliness, the beauty within the tragedy, and I understood it. And I understood it to that point of what someone else told me later. Each of us have our own book. Each of us come here, and I think it was Gary Zukov that did the Seed of the Soul book. He said we all come here when we plan to come, and we leave when we plan to go. Now our personality might not know that, but our soul knows that, and our soul is always more attuned than our personality is to our spiritual life and our spiritual walk and our spiritual motion. So I'll say that once I understood, or even to the point of overstand or inner overstand, I was able to get back to my mind and understand it and get to my, what this one woman I heard say, my happy sorrow, to where it's okay to cry. It's okay to be walking through a store and they play um, Celine Dion song, My Heart Lives On, and I gotta pretend like I'm looking at something as I'm
Oh.
like, this crazy motherfucker, why is he crying looking at cookies? But
Oh.
I'm crying, you know what I'm saying? So I just gotta kind of
Yeah.
roll and just know that's what's gonna happen and get through it. And there's so much more, but I don't, I think that's enough. I mean, as far as what we were trying to say at that moment.
Yeah.
So,
That makes sense. We are so much more than now in
was
this
there
body.
anything that you, was there anything you heard that you, and I don't have a problem. We're there now. So if, was there
No,
anything you were thinking?
I think
No?
that was really powerful. I think that really brings it home also what you were saying earlier about what are you really identifying with? And, we could choose to identify with this or that, or we can identify with just the essence of who we are in our name. And also in a way of, are you going to identify with anger and you're just going to be bitter and angry over the way she died, or are you going to identify with the beautiful sorrow, like you talked about, the happy sorrow?
And I
Those
really
are all,
feel, sorry, go ahead.
I don't know, yeah, I'm just saying those are all choices of how we choose to see things.
And I really feel, as I said, I didn't finish the disgrace. I really feel it's a disgrace. My cousin said to me when he was going to take me to go buy a suit because I had no clothes and I had to have something for the. And we're driving, and he's my cousin, but him and my lady had this funny relationship. And if you've ever had like a cousin of your man's or your best friend, your man's best friend, you sometimes you'll have that one where y'all just talking shit to each other, but it's just love. So
Oh,
they
yeah.
had
Oh, yeah.
so they had one of those relationships, and what he said was, he was like, punch me in the face when I say this. Just tell me to pull over so you can just punch me in the face and get over it. But he said, I want you to understand something. He said, not understand it, but I want to say it to you. He said, remember, man, remember you had 17 years of a love that I witnessed, man. And I was like, these motherfuckers are in love, man. This shit is beautiful, or something along those lines. And he was like, but you had 17 years of a healthy relationship that other people got to witness and see the blessing of. You had something for 17 years that some people only get for a week, or they might just get it for a year, or they might get it but you had it for that long. Some people don't get it at all. He said, so remember that as you're going through what you're going through, and don't forget that blessing. And he was like, I didn't know if you were going to get upset when I said that, but just kind of had to tell you that. But it was just like the chaplain when he said not to keep playing that day. For me, I don't know, having strong men around me like that, whether it be the chaplain or my cousin, it allowed me to even see the importance of our position in the family as far as men. Like one dude said to me, all he said to me, he said, I don't know what to say to you, but I'm gonna say this. You gonna make it through this because you a man, and that's what we do, bro. That's all he said. And I still remember how much I needed him as a brother, those words when he said that. And that might be sexist, that might be, but that was to me the broship that sometimes in sistership, there's certain things y'all can say to each other that, or I even witnessed my lady say to her sister sometimes that I would never understand except that I witnessed it. And I'm like, that was kind of like when our bros, So,
Yeah.
um,
It was just what you needed to hear.
right. So yeah,
No.
in that, yeah, I really think, as you had said and what we were saying before, and I believe there's three parts of ourselves. There's the body, there's the spirit, and there's the soul. And I'm only saying it towards those words and the translations I know. But excuse me, I think when we set into our soul and we connect with that divine side of ourselves in the spirit of our soul, then in that we're able to understand things like death, like, not to get religious again, but like Yahshua said before, to understand certain things that he said about the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven, and that culture that he talked about, not religion, but the actual culture. The As we gather together in our collective consciousness, there's certain things we understand. Like as I'm talking to you, my sister, there's certain things that Roan can say and has said that no one else could have possibly said. You know what I mean? And there's certain things you can say to me
Absolutely.
that there's, or Don in the group, or different people in the group. There's certain things they say. Like there's certain things Joshua said before, and he said to me, he was like, Ron, I wanted to say that before. I'm not going to get upset that you were the first one to say it, but the way you said it, and I was like, there's certain things you said that I've said the same. So it's interesting. But I think when we set into our spirit, when we set into our soul, then we understand these bodies a little bit better. We understand, even going back to those racisms and sexisms and different things. But if we won't get out of that, then that's where we'll be. We'll be in that lower chakra. We'll be in um, we'll be in those emotions. And we won't do that Bruce Lee thing that I always go back to and we talked about before. You'll stay focused on the paint on the finger instead of where the finger's pointing. And it's
Exactly.
so
You missed the forest for the trees.
yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah,
Yeah, totally.
I think I got that with another way was Bob Marley's I and I think we talked about that before too. But I love the way when you hear Rastas do that, the older ones, it's how they say we, it's how they say us. And I think that's a part of becoming a man and becoming a woman in its entirety, is realizing the interdependence. The Everything I do is affecting other people, and understanding the we in that and the us. Before that, we're in our boyhood and our girlhood where everything's about me and everything's about I. But once we start understanding that interdependence, I remember somebody got mad at me for saying it. It was like, I don't think interdependence comes after independence. That means that you're allowing other people to live your life. And I'm like, that's how you see that? So, yeah.
Oh, when you challenge people's ideas, it can really ruffle them. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of going back to a point you made earlier about tsunamis of emotions, okay, this kind of ties into another question is how do you integrate your emotions into your authentic self? Like when things are just raging, how can you stay authentic and deal with those kind of emotions?
Practice.
Okay.
Just because, like, I heard, I think Joyce Meyer say a long time ago, when I was into her for a second. I haven't really listened to her in a long time, or kind of got into. But what she said, what do you do with trouble? Practice. You know what I mean? So when, to me, it's like surfing. It's like swimming. It's like I've been swimming since I was like 4. And I've been jumping off like those real high dives since I was like 5. And one of the things I learned was don't panic. I remember one of the when I thought I was a gangster, one of my older guys, like we used to go to clubs, and like in your 20s, you don't have to even think you're gangster. Most guys in their 20s, like you could be in the military, you could be in college, you could be in a frat. For some reason, our dumbasses just go to clubs or go to parties and we'll just start fighting. You know what I mean? And just because we just want to show how badass we are. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
But one thing he told me was don't panic. So in life, I remember when the lifeguard told me that when I was 4 or 5. You're in the 12 foot right now. Yeah, you could never reach the ground, but if you don't panic, you'll remember that you learn how to swim. You know what I mean? So just tread the water, just relax, and
Makes
just get
sense.
back. Yeah. So I just think, yeah, I think that's how I get through it.
Yeah,
But
makes sense.
yeah.
I can see how those experiences played into it. Real quick, do you have any books that are like maybe 2, 3 books that are some favorites that you would recommend anybody to check out? Or
Yes, the alchemist. You know what I mean?
oh
And
yeah, is that
you know what I mean?
Paulo Coelho, right?
You'll probably say it better than I ever would try. You know?
I don't know if that's the appropriate way, if that's how my mind wants to read it.
You're
What
right,
else?
but he did.
What else?
And I actually recommend, whether or not you believe in religion or not, I really recommend that you actually read scripture, whether it be the Torah, whether it be the Bible, whether it be the Quran, whether it be Kabbalah, whether it be studying into Buddha. There's a lot of different books, but I just think it's good to explore those because in that I think you see a spiritual culture that you wouldn't see by just sticking to one. So um, but away from those, I know Celestine Prophecy, definitely.
Mm, that's been on
Any 20,
everybody's list.
right. I think any 20, 18, 20, between that 18 and 25, even, but if you're older, still get them. But I think it's the way he wrote those books as an action adventure parable. I just think they were just done so tight for anyone trying to understand levels of spirituality, frequencies of consciousness. Um, I think those alchemists, Celestine Prophecy, and there's another one. There's so many more because I'm a nerd when it comes to books.
Oh yeah.
But I think Green's 48 Laws of Power, I think that's important too. Now, with that one, I think it's not, I didn't use it as a way to try to start manipulating people, or for me, it was to see how people use their power. Because once again, like we were saying before, once you start getting information, it cooks for me. I didn't say this before, but this is what I tell the boys, and it goes along with the program, that once you start cooking up data information, it turns into an awareness. Once you start getting awareness and start applying it, you start to have a wisdom or an experience with that knowledge and that information. And with that wisdom, knowledge, and information, and that pattern that we were just talking about, you start getting an understanding. And you'll have understandings with different wisdoms and experiences and different knowledges and different informations. Um,
I agree with
but
that. The more information you have, the more you can understand. There's less ignorance you have because when you're ignorant, there's so much to fear and misunderstand and not have compassion about because you simply haven't taken the effort to learn about it. That was my
right, I
son.
think
Sorry about that. I have 2 boys here in the background.
no doubt. No, I was, yeah, no doubt.
It was a ghost.
Right,
It's
right.
paranormal. Yeah, which things that do happen, not to make light of that. But yeah, how about what's your favorite way to connect with other people? Do you do it by how do you bond with people?
Conversation and one-on-ones like we're doing now. That's my favorite. I think I think even at work when I have issues with people, not everyone, because I think some people manipulate one-on-ones depending on how hard they are, how high they are, as far as on the corporate scale. Their whole reason for having a one-on-one might be different. But if we're on the same level, and I mean, I don't care about your level. I just don't want to get in the for instance, I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole, but there was a lady that's emotional that I was dealing with. I didn't want to have a one-on-one with her because she was going to use that one-on-one to,
Mm,
I always wanted a witness when I was with her. But to go back to what I was saying, one-on-ones, talking with people, even riding in
nice.
the elevator, I'm that weird guy that goes, just, I'm in the
Yeah.
DC area, it's weird, and people are like, where are you from? And I'm like, from here. And they were like, you kind of, most people don't talk to people that don't know here. That's kind of interesting. You know what I mean? I was like, yeah, I'm
Yep.
different. So,
I do that too. It throws people off at first, and then once they realize you don't really have an agenda, you're just there, then they just kind of open up, and it's like this,
they do that there where
wow.
you, they do that.
Seattle, and
Oh,
people
so
are
they
very
do that there.
much, I mean, they're very much in their own worlds. Yeah, wherever I go, it's, they're always doing something, and hello, what? Yep, okay, and then back to their thing. And so when I pull them out of it, they're always kind of shocked, like, why are you saying hello? You just broke protocol, It's like,
Right. Yeah.
how are you doing? Throws
You
everybody
can,
off.
right. If you see somebody, if we're walking down the same street, and like, hey, how's it going? Oh, hi. And they get kind of nervous,
Yeah,
but it's like,
yeah, they
just say,
do. Why is someone saying
yeah,
hello to me? It's sad that we
exactly.
have those reactions in this culture, but in the United States, there is a difference between people approaching you and other countries I've been in where they're generally just saying hello, whereas here you never know what someone's agenda might be, so I can see why they would have that reaction. But in general, I wish
Yeah. What?
everyone would do more of that. Just say hello and smile. Say how are you doing. Oh,
Yeah. I see that. Yeah. Go ahead.
okay. What are you really passionate about? What drives you? I know you talked about the Imaginarium and being an Imagineer. Is that kind of your biggest thing right now?
Probably family, community, and the people. It really, like I said before, there's something in that connection between family, community, and the people. I'm really, I'm really passionate about. I'm passionate about being considerate, like we were saying before. I'm passionate about a focus on the family. That's one of my main things. I love family. I love seeing bonding, people kind of just, I love that. I came from a community like that. Like, even I came from different class communities, different, most of my communities are pretty diverse. And I'll say
Yeah.
I had a single mom, but like she worked for IBM, like, and she was, so like if my dad was there, we probably would have been upper middle class, or we would probably been made middle class. But because it was just my mom, we stayed like working class, almost getting in the middle. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
it's like that. So
I
I had a
understand that.
different, yeah, a different understanding. I went down a rabbit hole. I'm like, where? How did we get here?
Yeah,
I do
that's
that.
okay. So one question was going to be kind of about A Dark Night of Soul and how you overcame it, but I think you kind of covered that one. The story that you
Right.
shared, that was probably the most powerful example I've heard yet. Um, what about triggers? Okay, so when something triggers you, especially maybe anger, are there any topics or posts in the group that ever trigger you, and how do you deal with it in the group or outside the group?
Inconsiderate people, even though I'm inconsiderate sometimes myself, and I'm disrespectful sometimes, right, myself. The worst I am is driving. I cannot. I'm trying to just watch myself, but I'm the worst. If somebody's doing something, I'm like, this stupid mother. It's like
You're a road
I don't know.
rager? What?
I, I am. I'm like I'm trying to get. I'm getting better at it, but I cannot. I'm like, Roan, what if the person in front of you is like, I was just doing it last week. I was so mad at this guy in front of me. Now I'm not the guy like pulling up next to you trying to fight. I'm just in my car venting. And I thought to myself, and I'm driving to this presentation at the juvenile detention center. And the thing that made me calm down, I was like, Roan, what if the guy in front of you is like one of the administrators, and you get there and he's like, you're about to talk to the kids about emotions and stuff, buddy.
Oh,
So yeah, one of my passions. Well, no, you said anger,
yeah,
but
triggering.
truthfully, I really do not. It's a pet peeve of mine, but I do not
Uh-oh.
like the fact that I don't like religious bashing. I hate it. I am not a religious person. I don't say I'm Muslim or Buddhist or Christian, but the and it seems it's always the people that don't know what they're talking about. It's like it seems they'll pull. I don't like that. I just don't. I really think that when people try to make other people's culture into their perspective, you're doing yourself the biggest disservice. But it just, I really don't like that. Whether I don't agree with Christianity, I don't agree with certain things about, let me take that back. I don't agree with everything about different religions. There's little things about, but for me, I still think there there's nothing like going to a good church or a good temple or going to be invited to a mosque and going and seeing people gathering together and understanding, wait, oh, so there's Muslim extreme and like there's Christian extremists. You know what I mean? Like just like over the weekend, we saw the white nationalists using Christianity, and it's like and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole of that, but
There's a
I
bit of
don't know.
truth in everything, it sounds like you're saying. And so we shouldn't be bashing things we don't understand.
There you go. I didn't want to stay there, and you just wrapped it up good. Because
No, I'm with you there. Well,
that's
how would you describe
really,
your spirituality then? Like, do you have a label? Or if someone said, "What's your faith?" or how would you describe your spirituality?
it offends people a lot, but um, I would describe my spirituality as most people. I call it the kingdom. Like I really think when I listen to each one of the people that they say, whether it's Buddha, whether it's Muhammad, whether it's Moses, and the guy asked me a long time ago, he's like, what religion are you? And this was back when I would give him a whole bunch of names. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
Buddhist, Muslim, all these things. But for me, when I listen to what that guy Yahshua said, Jesus, whatever you want to call that particular name, and I listen to Buddha, and he talks about the way, the eternal way. For me, I'd say the kingdom. And when people say, well, isn't that a religion? I'd say, no, it's more of a culture. It's more of a, even when you hear that prayer on earth as it is in heaven, I hear that in all the different religions. I hear that without going into the whole hell and different things. When I say that, people's idea of hell and things like that, I just hear there's a kingdom, there's a collective consciousness that what we call religion reveals different frequencies of our spiritualities and consciousness. Um, so my spirituality would be probably called kingdom culture, but I think words mess it up. So I
I
don't
hear
know.
what you're saying. Yeah. Kind of more about what they're all aiming for here and now, family and community, and not so much the details of the dogma and stuff, so much as the things they all have in common about how they want to live. And
I call it the yin and yangs.
yeah, that
You're
makes
stuck
sense.
in things of religion instead of seeing the way that all of them are kind of focused on and pushing you towards, whether you realize it or not. So, yeah.
All right. Slightly controversial question. Not that we haven't touched on anything controversial yet, but what do you like or dislike about adminning in the group, and what do you wish people understood about being a moderator in the group?
You say what I like and what I don't like, or what I don't like. Just what I don't like.
Whatever. Sure. What do you
Uh,
like and you don't like? Yeah, talk about what you don't like then,
we,
or what you like.
well, we talked about what I like when I was talking about the different perspectives and perceptions, and it seems just like we push for us not to be so much. Some people push for the ego, and I'm just like, still don't agree with that. But most people kind of trying to see things from different perspectives. One of the things, about administrator or being a moderator,
Yeah.
uh, that the difficult part is making sure you remember that it doesn't mean anything that you're a moderator, that you're on the, like, you know what I mean, that you're part of the
Yeah.
staff, part of
Yep.
administrating it, and the hardest thing is to remember to keep it balanced, to not to get into my emotions, to kind of remember that I didn't live the life that this person that's talking to me lived. And
Wow.
one of the best things is to remember that when someone's just being an asshole, that they're just being an asshole and not to take it personal. You know what I mean? Because
That's a big one. You
but just
got
like when you're playing Xbox or you're playing anything online, the moment you get too emotional, you lose. Like when
This
you're
is
listening
true.
on Xbox, you just got having a meltdown. You're like, oh my
Oh yeah.
god, dude! And everybody's laughing their ass off because they're like, I'm glad that is not me lunching
Oh
like
yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
Couldn't make the basket, shoot this guy or whatever. So,
Leroy Jenkins. Yeah, yeah.
hold up, what do you say?
That's from it's a nerdy thing from massive multiplayer game. It's from World of Warcraft. There's this infamous YouTube video where they're in this raid party and everyone has this critical job to do. So, you know, if you're the warrior, you can't be attacking the enemy too soon or it's going to kill these people. And they all have to work as a team, right? And this guy just goes in there and you can hear on the headset because they're recording all the people. He's like, Leroy Jenkins, and just runs in without the rest of the team. And like this mass carnage ensues. And it went viral overnight because everyone was like, oh, I couldn't believe how bad it was. I don't
I'm gonna tell you this
know.
because that game and all my friends bring up that game. The same reason why I haven't watched Game of Thrones is the same reason why I never played that game. It's
Well,
so
good for
funny
you.
because everybody was like, it's so, and I'm like, I've never played it. I'm not gonna play it. You
You
know?
rebel, you.
I think that.
Okay. A member wants to know what draws you to respond to certain posts in the group. Is it ones where you're learning about something? Is it that you enjoy interacting with other people? Or are there things where you just are observing people kind of succeed or fail? What draws you in to respond to certain things? They want to know.
Really conflict. It's so funny. I mean, just to be honest, when but I won't always say something when it's conflict unless it's like maybe to try to calm it down and be like, well, you know, come or something to try to balance it out.
If
But
they're being too aggressive, maybe, or something.
right. But I think a lot of times I'll hear people talk and I'll find a place where I don't think the perspective has been given yet. And it's not that I think the perspective should, could, or would be given this way or that way. I just think it fits. Like I think Tupac said in the song Hail Mary, I peeped a weakness in the rap game and sowed it. So if you actually even think about those words, when you have a hole in a particular blanket or a sock or whatever, you want to sew it up so it's together.
So
So
that maybe even include playing the devil's advocate then. Maybe you don't necessarily, that's the one thing you might put forth, but you're trying to put another perspective out there of, hey, have you thought about this? Or
no,
no,
and the
okay.
reason, but I will say I don't like playing. That word when you said it, if you saw my face, I was like, oh. The reason why is
The
because
word.
I don't do it on purpose. People have said, "Are you playing devil's advocate?" And I'm like, "No, I wasn't." But I guess the question was yin or yang in the way I was presenting it to look at it from different perspectives.
Okay.
So, but no, I don't ever try to take it. Wait, maybe I don't do it on purpose, but I think I remember in the old group before this one was started, the old metaphysics group. This lady in there, she was an administrator too. I forget her name, but anyway, she thought I was race bashing. She thought that I was,
Oh no.
and she didn't understand the perspective that we've talked about now, and that it wasn't something new to me. Like I started getting into Jane Elliott back in the '90s, so I understood certain levels of even with the blue eye, brown eye theory, why we saw things. So she, it was just interesting. It was just interesting that she, at some point, she even wanted to throw me out the group. I could even feel it was because I was pushing the race issue, but because she saw me, and she was European American, I'm African American, and I think in a way, no, I saw it. I was like, she's not seeing it. She's not seeing it from the perspective I'm trying to give it. She's seeing it as
She's
a,
misunderstanding.
seeing it as a white girl listening to a black guy and thinking that I'm bashing white people.
Ah,
But as I'm
gotcha.
about where race comes from, if I'm trying to tell you where race comes from, and I'm trying to tell you the difference between European Americans and the term white, and where the term white comes from, and every time I say the term white, or I'm talking about that particular word, and you take it as I'm talking about you, and you're like, but we, and I'm like, why do you keep we and white when I keep telling you why you even use that term is not from you? Do you have $1 trillion in
Right.
the bank? Do you
Right.
have, you don't come from a certain level of, do you go every year to celebrate with the first pilgrims? No, you don't. Do you go back to any bank that goes to the corporation of London, or go back to a family crest that goes back to the Roman Empire? No, you don't. So when you say those terms, so that's what I was getting at, but she just kept. But it happens when I'm talking to African American people, and it sounds like I'm talking subjective, but I'm not. And
Yeah.
they will not get out of the square of reality, I'll call it, and they won't see outside of it. I'm like, there's four sides to a box. Be the fifth side and be in and out, in or out of that square. I didn't mean to say box. Let me take that back. Box is six sides, but with the square, you have four sides of it. And you know how they say, I'm going into the metaphysical side of it, but I'm just saying, sometimes when we get stuck in that square of reality where we've taken on a position, we can't get outside of it. So if I keep on talking, and if I'm telling you about the word black, and every time I say it, you're tagging on the black, or every time I say white and you're tagging on the white, then there's no way you're going to see what the hell Roan is saying about black and white.
Right. Right.
So that goes back to maybe what we were talking about before, as
Yeah, that
far as
makes
with the,
sense.
because a girl just told me just recently, I was interviewing for that one show, that podcast I'm doing every once in a while. She came back to me and she was like, Roan, I'm telling you, it was so funny. I'm talking to my son, and something you said to me 6 months ago. I was so pissed when I was talking to you about it. My son says it, the light turns on, and I go, "Oh my God, that's what Ron was trying to say." And I,
Nice. The
it was
epiphany.
about, but yeah, but go ahead, yeah.
That's what happens when you plant seeds. Tell me, is there something that you did as a child that maybe you still do in your life that caused you to lose track of time? It just were so caught up in it and happy that you forget, you lose time.
um,
Uh-oh. Yes.
the kids still around, but I'll say this: spending time with women. I love women, and I love, I love spending just time with women. And when I when I met my lady, she was the ultimate spending timer.
Oh, such a
But
romantic. Okay,
that's no, I wasn't. Don't even think. If she heard you say that, I'd be like, no, he's not. You know what I mean? But yeah,
oh. Well,
time
okay,
spending time. Yeah,
okay. Tell me about the last time you couldn't stop smiling.
I'll tell you this. My lady, um, just knowing her, I used to tell her, if there's anything going on in the world, if you smile and you're good, I'm good. So
That's really beautiful.
just knowing her and thinking about her, like just realizing when people say you, when someone would say, "You really love that girl, don't you?" Like people that never met her before. I'll say this: I was at Harris. They were doing my locks one time, and the girl said, "I've never heard someone talk about their lady as much as you talk about her, and she's not even here."
Aww.
And I was like, "I want you to know two reasons. I do that because I love her so much, and the second reason is that I'm in a hair salon, and there's so many women around." And I'm trying to let them know I got a lady, so I don't. So I'm staying in my lane.
Right. Like,
Right.
beg off, ladies.
Right. Kept me in my lane. You know what I mean?
With
Because
some
that's what I would do.
space.
If I
Yeah,
saw a person
yeah.
or attracted, the first thing I would do is like, oh, my lady has a purse like that to keep me in my lane. You know what I mean? So,
Yep,
yeah.
yep. That makes sense. Tell me, what are your thoughts? Or tell me about a time where you thought to yourself, like, wow, like I can't believe I'm doing this.
Um, the last time
Sure, anything that
at the
comes to mind. It's pretty broad.
last week when I started first, and I'm gonna be going back. Um, talking to the kids at the juvenile detention center, I held their attention for like an hour and 15 minutes. I had like two videos that I played for like 3 minutes to 5 minutes. But I'm looking
Wow.
around and none of the kids were like, "Oh my God, would he shut up?" Like they were engaged. And like it was about 40 to 50 kids and like close to like maybe 10 to 20 staff. But when I realized how long I had been talking and that afterwards they were that it was just I can't even believe even as I'm talking about it now, I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing that. And even the reception I got afterwards, like staff came up to me and they were like, "I know you came for the kids. But I'm gonna tell you now, I gained so much out of what you just gave." Like, and they're shaking my hand, and I'm like, I can't. Let me say this. Right now, at this moment, talking to you right now, I can't believe I'm doing that. And I can't believe that I'm still sane after my lady went home. I can't believe that everything in my life has helped me get to this point. So every moment I'm like that. I'm really I just can't that's almost every moment that I can't believe that I'm in this moment and I'm still but the detention center, that was pretty up there. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
I've gained a lot just from talking to you too, so I can only imagine how lucky they were. It sounds like you were meant to be there.
thank you. That's what's up.
I
Yeah.
love it. It's a really broad question, so you can just whatever comes to mind. There's no right or wrong answer, not looking for a specific thing, but what are your thoughts on happiness?
Happiness. Well, when you said it, it made me think about that Will Smith movie, The Pursuit
The
of
pursuit of
Happiness.
happiness? I love that movie.
Right. And I still remember when he broke down, I think it was Thomas Jefferson that had wrote that in the Constitution, or was it the Bill of Constitution or the Declaration of Independence? And in that, what was the question again? So I don't go down a rabbit hole.
Well, what are your thoughts on happiness? Like, what does it mean to you? How does a person become happy?
My thoughts on happiness goes back to what I said earlier about a happy sorrow. Um, we choose. We don't know we do. And I told the kids when I was at the detention center, when I finally realized the intersection we come to, and I say intersection, it brings back Robert Johnson at the Crossroads. It brings back Bone Thugs and Harmony song, See You at the Crossroads. But in every moment of every day, we have a choice of how we're going to deal with that moment, whether it be, oh shit, I'm about to die. You know what I mean? Like, this is my final fucking moment here. Excuse my language again. I'm dropping
It's
eight F
fine.
bombs.
It's fine. Yeah, it doesn't bother me. It's okay.
But happiness to me now is the choice of every moment. And in the original that I just gave to somebody last night, the original poem, the Serenity Prayer, it says
Mm.
something along the lines of reasonably happy in this life, so that I may be ultimate happy in the next one with you. And he's speaking to God, or in and how, and I love the fact he spoke of Jesus as a man, not trying to offend anybody, but that they didn't try to make Jesus into God as they do sometimes in religion. But in that, happiness to me is really a choice of the moment. It's really a choice. And that's what I said to the boys. There was a point when I was about 21 to 25. I was walking down the shopping center, and I might have read Celestine Prophecy before this moment, but I'm not sure. But I'm like, I'm going to see how long I can hold this good thought. I was feeling good. I was like, it's one of those days when you're feeling kind of silly because you're just in such a good moment. And I was like, I'm going to realize when, I'm going to try to see when my energy changes or my emotions change. And it could have been, it might have been 3 stores. But by that 3rd store, I was feeling like, I was feeling the paranoia. I was feeling that moment where you feel like, the world ain't shit. You know what I mean? I haven't done anything in life. And I was like, oh, whoa. Because I remember just 3 stores back, the giddy moment. And I was like, what did I do? So without dissecting that moment, I started realizing that, just like I was saying, I said surfing before, but I didn't go into it. There's a movie called The North Shore. It came out in the 80s. It might be real cheesy for anybody who wants now, but it was about surfing. And I've always loved surfing. And I've only been like on the East Coast trying to do it, but I've never really. But I think each moment is like that. It's like that wave that you can wipe the fuck out, but it's your choice to get back to shore and go, I'm never going to try this again. And you're just sitting on the shore and you're like,
Right.
those are some waves. Or you can go back out there and try it again and keep on going. And I think every moment's like that. So happiness to me is a choice of every moment. A lot of people say they're in pursuit. I think it's, or going back to the pursuit, that's cool that we're all in pursuit. But I think once we find out that it's a choice of being within us at every moment, then it goes back to another overstanding that we talked about before. That, am I going to go through this point that I just lost everything in my life, from my queen to everything I've ever owned, little, my library, all my book, whatever. Am I going to keep on just keep living that pissed off that I had to go through it? Or am I going to say, Roan, here it is. Is it a blessing only if it works out the way you want it to? So you had a great, you and Marianne were great. It was such a good love. Oh, but 17 years ain't good enough, huh? Now you're mad at me for giving you the blessing of her. That goes back.
Oh.
It's like, oh, so a blessing's only a blessing if it happens the way I want it to. And in what I'm saying to you, there was a moment where it felt as though, I wouldn't say the spirit, but my consciousness was doing that. The soul side of myself was given that. And it seemed like my myself has, I gotta kind of tell myself that sometimes. Because if I don't, girl told me one time, older lady told it to her, flowers don't sit and complain about the sunshine and the rain, because they gotta have both. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
True.
understanding those different things like that, I don't know, man.
That
It's
makes
just,
sense. No, I
there you
like
go.
that analogy of the surfing too. That kind of ties it together neatly. I think that's a beautiful way to illustrate it. So one last question, then we'll wrap it up. And I really appreciate the time you've taken. We talk a lot in the group about how we want to change the world, and we want to be specific and practical and ground about it. So we talk about, wellness of body, mind, spirit, and then going out and utilizing our unique self and gifts and passions and things. How do you feel that we can change the world, and where do you fit into that, particularly for you? How do you do it?
I think stop believing that we can't have a pretty good world. I hear too many people allowing themselves to say, my buddy says it all the time, Ron, I hear you, man, but I just don't see this world getting to the point where the meek shall inherit it. And I'm like,
Oh, I'd be guilty of that for sure.
Right, you said you are? Yeah, but my thing is, and what I do when I was like, but you're doing it right there. As long as you don't see it, as long as you're not working towards it, then you're not being it. It's in the moment. I mean, even as I'm saying what I'm saying now, there's something about my own ignorance and my own unawareness that tells me, Roan, it's already here, what you're talking about, and most of us just don't see it. And even as I'm saying what I'm saying, how can I be happy? How can I find beauty in the tragedy of my everything not here anymore? How did that happen? So most people say, cause you believe that bullshit in scripture. You're actually going with that stuff that they said, and as long as you're applying faith, then that's why. And I'm like, yeah, you could be right, but I'm not doing what you just said. I'm actually seeing the science of my life in a knowing, and that goes back to the conscious motion of hip hop that I talk, coining the name for a particular culture that I believe goes back to the beginning of time, goes back to the collective consciousness sitting around a fire, and there's a drummer and they're dancing. Even if there isn't a drummer, they might be just singing together, and they're coming together collectively. In that, I think that there is an understanding that you can't even understand what we call a blessing. Not getting into how some people, you're really cursing somebody when you say that, you don't even know it. I'm not even talking about that. I'm just saying what we call a blessing. How could we know what a blessing is if we didn't know what I won't say it like that, and I'll say it like this and I'll stop.
Something painful, or
Pain
that doesn't
said
go the
this,
way we wanted, or
but more of part of creation is destruction. Once we understand those yin and yangs to the way, then we understand the way and why the way is the way that it is.
okay.
If that makes any human sense.
A little bit,
But
yeah, I think so. But in a practical sense, you're not just working on yourself, because I hear how much you're working on yourself, which a lot of people say if you want to really change yourself first. And I hear that you're doing that, but you're also doing more than just talking about it and doing internal work. You're working with youth. And I know on your site it said there was a focus on males. Is there a reason why? I know you say youth, so it's for everybody, but there's a bit of a focus on young males, if I'm correct about that.
right.
And why is that?
Well, one of the reasons is because I grew up without a dad. And not to start playing the violins, because like we had talked before, a lot of people talk about statistics as far as fathers not being there, and they try to make it a African American thing or a working class thing. Or what I found in my studies is that the statistics are not that far apart. The American dad, period, no matter what he looks like, no matter what religion, something along the lines, I don't think men learned what I call the three phases of manhood. And this is not to disrespect my gay friends. That's not a lane I understand. So when I
Right,
speak
right.
about, I'm talking about manhood and how it complements womanhood in that sense. But I don't think, I think the reason why I like working with males is because it's easier for me to see myself in them. And in talking about the three phases, whether it be malehood, boyhood, or manhood, I can give them examples of those firsthand. And one of the things I tell them is, going back to not having a dad, like I said, whether it be European American, African American, Japanese American, or Philippine American, or whatever American you are, and only speaking about the borders of America at this point. But
Right, right.
I think there's a car's driving by. I kind of lost my train of thought. Where was I at?
Yeah, well, in terms of it's not really just one group. There's a whole bunch of young men. You're saying it doesn't matter what kind of dad it is. There's a common theme there.
There it is. What I wanted to make sure I said was, my dad wasn't always around, but he was a phone dad. One of the things I realized was, he used to say to me, he used to be he was an alcoholic. So a lot of times when he was talking, he was drunk, but I stay on the phone because the stories he told, I still wanted some of that connection. And he wasn't abusive to me. He was to my older brother. He just wasn't to me.
Oh.
And he used to say, as I got older, he'd say, excuse my language when I say this, but it's just what he would say. You just don't know how I fucked you up, kid. You just don't know. With me not being there, you just don't know how I fucked you up.
Oh.
He would always say that. Now, as a teenager, I didn't know. I was like, yeah, you did pretty much fuck me up. You know what I mean? Because I was in the pain and I was in the emotions of it. But what I started realizing was what I said to him, and he told me later how that liberated him in certain ways. Now, he didn't use those words, but what I told him was, I was like, Dad, you don't realize that just being aware of my dysfunctional upbringing is me knowing that I was raised dysfunctional. And it always makes me think about the G.I. Joe moment when they say on a cartoon, knowing's half the battle. Once you're aware of your own unknowns, once you're aware that, okay, yeah, I didn't have a dad. Like I used to say to my lady, I used to be like, babe, I was like, we grew up dysfunctional. He was like, she used to be like, I just do not like when you say that. We're not dysfunctional. I said, babe, I didn't say we're dysfunctional. I said that we came up in a dysfunctional. I'm not. So then she started to understand it. But once you're aware of that, it gives you a power over it. So with young boys, I think a lot of times the things I've been through and me understanding my responsibilities with my lady and understanding, like I told them, I don't think when people talk about being kings and queens, I don't think there's certain levels of my manhood or the thought of being a king or a queen in our kingdom together. I couldn't have done that without her. So sometimes what I've been through with not having a dad, but understanding some of the dysfunctions I had in those phases when I was 13 and I was pissed off and I had all these emotions and I didn't know why they were there, and then realizing, oh, that's normal, not only for a 13-year-old, but even more normal for a 13-year-old that doesn't have a figure to show him that, yeah, that's normal. So in those things, I think that's the reason why I focus more on young males, but I also leave it open to the young girls, because I see their eyes when I connect with my little sisters between the ages of 13 and 17, and I tell them, me and my lady were together 2 years. We fell asleep in the same bed. We kissed, we made out, but we never had sex. And it wasn't because we couldn't, it's because I didn't want to, because I didn't want that sort of relationship yet. So I tell them, we came from a working class neighborhood where people say nobody ever amounts to anything from that area. We had a loving, healthy relationship. We had, so certain things I can tell her about how I saw we complemented each other as brother and sister first, and then as man and woman, and then how I saw her go from her girlhood into her womanhood and into her queendom, and how she would say, how I would, when she said, someone would say, what are you doing? I'm going to see my man. You know what I mean? She's the way she used to say, call me her man, and how it made me feel and how happy she was to have that. When my little sisters hear that from a man, they believe it's possible. They start to think about, I tell them things like when I asked my lady, I couldn't believe she hadn't slept with as many people as other girls around us. I'm not going into the numbers because I'm not gonna put her business out there, but it was unbelievable that she hadn't. Because I'm like, how the hell and you in the way that she told me her mom didn't want her in the yard of boys. So she wasn't supposed to be in the yard. If she went in the living room, she was like, oh my God. And then if she went in the bedroom, so she didn't know, but her mom had set her up to not get in, and it made her start thinking, okay, if I don't go in the living room, then I don't have to think about going to the bedroom. If I don't go to the bedroom, I don't have to think about laying in the bed and us making out. So she started to give me an understanding of, truthfully, how I had robbed certain women of certain things because I connived my way for them to come into the living room. And you know how guys are. We lie to girls. We tell them we love them. There's certain things we do. So in all of those things, when I'm talking to my little sisters and I'm telling them things that my lady let me know, I think it liberates them from things they might not have known because maybe their dad wasn't there. Maybe they didn't have a brother. Maybe they didn't have an uncle that cared enough to tell them, that you're a princess, that you really are. You know what I mean? That there's a certain level of royalty that you have in your girlhood that makes you a princess. So just those things, I think it helps out either boys or young girls. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think that's pretty amazing what you're doing. You've not only taken lessons you learned and overcome all these things in your own life, but now you're taking some of the most painful things and you're turning them into this beautiful healing gift that you're sharing and giving other people that's going to help them. I think that's just, I'm just blown away. I'm just really inspired. So I know we got to wrap it up, but I just want to say thank you so much for sharing everything that you did and just being real and taking this time. Like I really appreciate it. And thank you for everything that you give to the group and the community because it wouldn't be it without you.
No doubt. Well, thanks for the interview and I love the group. So I appreciate you. I always tell you that you're awesome, you know.
Yeah. I think
But
you're
no, I
pretty
really,
awesome too.
yeah, I think, yeah. And yeah, you said things, what you had just said, thank you. And I appreciate it because I try to stay so far away from what I'm doing. I just try to do wrong. And in
Yeah.
being wrong, you don't always know if you're doing good. You don't always know if people are connecting to what you're saying. So I really appreciate you kind of
Yeah, no, that's
giving me
beautiful.
so
In sharing yourself and being vulnerable and just being real about all these things, you've just shared so many things that are going to be a great mirror and um, just a really good epiphany, I think, for a lot of people out there. So I appreciate you very much. Well,
cool.
thank you. And I look forward to getting out to the East Coast and get a group meetup in your area soon. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, we
Oh,
got to do it. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
anybody who's interested, I'll put a link to your page in the post or the comments. And then should we have people friend you or message you if they want to connect with you? Or
Stay friendly. Understand that I keep it respect if you come to my page. You know what I mean? For everybody, just like the group. Keep it like the
yeah,
group. You know what I mean? So yeah,
gotcha.
but definitely see me. Yeah, definitely send me a friend request and maybe we can make a connection, a sister and brother like you and I have. You know what I mean?
That sounds
So,
beautiful. All right. Well, thank you very much. I look forward to
all right,
seeing you in the group. All
cool. You
right.
too.
Bye, Ron.